Welcome to the interview on the Raptors Republic Podcast Network. I'm Andrew Damelin, and if you hear my voice, we're going to be talking about the developmental side of the Raptors. And with the G League season about to get going, and with the Raptors' first-round pick from last season sent down to the G League, we have a perfect guest to tee off his season. His name is Chris Acker. He is the assistant coach at San Diego State, Malachi Flynn's alma mater. Chris, how are you? I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And before we even get into Malachi, I wanted to ask you, as someone who coaches in the Mountain West and someone who also played, 2 years at JUCO ball, 2 years at Division II ball, in Canada we have this inferiority complex where we want Americans to give us their approval. Raptors fans always want the nationally televised games. And does a Mountain West coach or player sort of have that same type of feeling where they want to get noticed by the Power 5 conferences?
Of course. I mean, you want to always put yourself in a position where people are recognizing what you're doing out there on the national stage. On the national stage, obviously you got to earn that recognition, but you take a lot of pride in putting yourself in that position for sure.
So when you're watching Malachi Flynn, I'm not sure if you were watching him while he was at Washington State. I know he transferred over and you were still at Boise State in that transfer year. So when you're watching film of him and you're getting ready to bring him into the fold, you and Dave Velasquez and obviously Coach Dutcher, what do you see that you like and what do you see that you want to get your teeth into and sort of tweak about his game?
Well, when I started watching film of Malachi, I was actually at Boise State and we tried to recruit him there right around the time he was transferring. And so when I took the job at San Diego State and I knew that he was going to be there, I had already had a really good feel of his game and where he was as a player. And then when I got to San Diego State and started being on the staff with him, it was just more so trying to get an understanding of his mindset, what his goals were going to be. Personally, I just wanted to know where he was at. Was he still trying to average 25 points a game? Is he trying to, make to the NBA, or is he trying to win a championship and let the chips fall where they may? And, to Malachi's credit, his mindset, from the beginning, was to win as many games as possible and then ultimately get himself in a position to be drafted, but he did it the right way.
Now, as someone coming from a Power 5 school, a Pac-12 school, you might call it going down, if you will. I mean, obviously no one from the Mountain West would call that, but is the attitude that Malachi had, is that typical of someone who transfers from a Power 5, quote, down to a mid-major, or is his attitude sort of atypical that, grab the sort of team by the horns and be that sort of emotional leader?
Well, I think every situation is different. Malachi was a unique breed. He already had a very alpha type personality where he knew he was really good. And so when you get a guy like that who knows they're good, and their only concern is making sure their teammates are good, and their only concern is winning, you got a special player. And so within all of that, he was able to get better every single day, obviously by himself, by living in the gym, and then working with us as a coaching staff and working with his teammates day and night on just his overall style of playing game, and then a system that was tailor-made for him, putting him in different ball stream situations over and over again, and then showing him film on those things, and then him taking all of that information in and still focusing on the task at hand, which is winning a conference championship, putting our team in the best position to make it to the NCAA tournament, and then having a tremendous assist-to-turnover ratio along the way. Again, it's just a tremendous credit to the work Malachi put in and just his mindset as a complete player.
Now, Chris, I'm not sure how much of the Raptors podcast you listen to, but we like to get sort of really down in the weeds, and talking to an assistant coach is a special thrill. And there's one quote from you that really interested me. You said, understanding how to teach the little things, all the little details and nuances that happen throughout the possession, understanding where your reads are coming from, who to play off, who's hot, how to get him the ball. So this is the level of detail that you try to impart on Malachi Flynn. And I'm wondering, just from a more technical perspective, how did you sort of implement what you wanted him to do, and how did he receive it, just from a very specific, technical point of view?
Well, technically, it was just, you sit there and you watch his game, and you take our offense, for example, and some of the plays that we ran specifically to balls in his hand, it starts with, your head coach saying, hey, I'm putting the ball in the hands of the guy that's going to make the right play. And then you sit there with Malachi and you watch film with him and you say, okay, Mal, here are the situations, here are the scenarios. They're going to help off this guy because he's a non-shooter or they don't consider him to be an elite shooter. You got to make the right play, and then we got to trust that guy is going to make the right play. Or Malachi, you're going to come off a ball screen, it's going to be you and the big 2-on-2 because they're not going to help off any of the shooters. Just take your time and figure out, within that little space, that little pocket, where your reads are going to come from, and just keep your head on the swivel as you're in those situations. And eventually, if you come off, a ball screen, or if you come off a screen, and you close the gap between the guy guarding you and the guy that's involved in that screening situation, your teammate's defender, you're usually going to be one-on-one with that big guy. And Malachi's mindset was he wanted to see that over and over and over again in film. And so when you make those, when you're in those situations every single day in practice because of how we play, and then you watch those film sessions, and then at the end of the day you have a guy that's that talented that can put it all together that quickly. It's a special situation, and it's really, again, it's a credit to our style of play. It's a credit to Malachi, and it's a credit to Coach Dutton putting the ball in his hands and giving him the opportunity to make those plays. And
you mentioned him being able to attack mismatches, and I'm not sure how much of Malachi's NBA career you've been watching, but there was a preseason game against Charlotte, and Cody Zeller got switched onto him, and it popped out to me. He immediately attacked the mismatch and just got him into the paint for like a little 10-foot pull-up, and I'm like, hold on a second, there might be something here. He was actually getting a lot of buzz during the preseason. So, as Raptors 905 followers, we're hoping for obviously some success down with the G League. But, given the fact that he comes over to the Mountain West, you guys start off 24-25-0, and he's a finalist for the top point guard for the Cousy Award. He wins the Conference Player of the Year, the Conference Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if this is an overly simplistic question, but how does someone like that sort of fall through the cracks from a Pac-12 team and go down to Mountain West, or is it sort of more? It's not as simple as that.
Well, no, I think first and foremost, I'm thankful that we were able to figure it out and we landed him. But I think a lot of times, when you're evaluating guys, you're looking for fits for your program, and Malachi is one of those guys that, initially in high school may not have passed the eye test, and then he's one of those guys that continued to get better. And when he got to Washington State, he wasn't a highly recruited player, but he proved himself at that level. And again, certain guys are just different. Malachi was one of those guys that was looking for a place where he could do exactly what he did. You mentioned his accolades and the success he had in San Diego State. That's why he came to San Diego State, so that he can accomplish exactly what we all got to witness him accomplish. And so it wasn't about finding another Power 5 program. It was about for him finding the right fit. And that's what he did at San Diego State. He found the right fit, and he got better every single day. And I think, it doesn't matter. I mean, people say it's kind of cliche. It doesn't matter where you go. It really does matter where you go, because at the end of the day, you want to go to a place that's going to fit you and it's going to give you the opportunity to do those things, and you mentioned like him looking for mismatches and different things like that. Well, for us, those are the nuances. Those are things we try to look at. The Mountain West is a very, very good conference, and there's really good coaches in our conference. A lot of teams in our league, they switch 1 through 5 in ball screens. So, for us, we got to find the mismatches. And Malachi did that night in and night out, at the collegiate level. And so I'm not surprised at all to watch him do it at the NBA level.
And you said he's a proven winner, and he was. I think you guys had a 30-2 record before the season was cut short. And the first loss your team had was against UNLV. And I was just wondering, from such a competitive alpha like Malachi, do you have any memories of what the locker room was like, or what he was like after that first loss of the season? Because you were so close to pulling off an undefeated year.
Well, he was angry. I mean, I remember that. I mean, there wasn't a guy in our locker room that wasn't upset. Because we definitely wanted. We talked about going undefeated, but I know our guys thrived on winning, and every practice when there was a loss, there was an argument. There was somebody frustrated with the refereeing or something like that. So we just had an overly competitive group, and so every loss, was detrimental. Those two losses were, they were hard for our guys to take, and Malachi was just, he was the forefront in front of all of that, and he was extremely frustrated. And again, a credit to his leadership, we were able to come back the next game and get a win.
Yeah, and you guys obviously finished out the season strong. You did lose in the conference tournament, but the 30-2 record is a 30-2 record, and the season is going on, and Malachi's draft stock is starting to rise. He's starting to be talked of as a first-round pick. Do you remember, and I'm not sure when Malachi said this, but he had a quote giving sort of his own scouting report. He says, "I'm 6'1", I don't get off the ground as much as NBA guys do. I need to have those floaters and pull-ups, or else I won't have a chance. I have to be super skilled to go up against these guys that are freaky athletic. I need to get faster and stronger." Do you remember him saying that and like maybe going up to him and being like Malachi, don't downgrade. Don't give every downside of your game. Do you remember ever sort of reading that, or is that's just how humble or I guess how realistic Malachi is?
Yeah, I remember reading that. I never really said anything to him about it, but I mean, that's more to me a guy understanding what his limitations are and then trying to focus in on what's going to help him have the most success at that level. And he was just brutally honest about where he was as a player. I mean, you can look at him and say, like, this is what he's not. But when you're competing against him and you're in a battle with him, you start seeing that, like, he's one of the best competitors you're going to be around. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Malachi's one of those guys that's in the league 15 years and, a superstar for an organization one day just because of, what he's been able to do. And it's a beautiful thing to watch him be able to compete with guys like Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet and learn from guys that, some would consider to be underdogs in their collegiate careers that have become, household names there in Toronto. So I'm really, really excited about the future for Malachi in Toronto.
And at this stage, are NBA scouting departments still going on he's only 6'1"? Like, is that still a thing, given the success of so many different programs and like size not being an issue? That's just still like a stigma is the size. That's just kind of how it goes still.
Well, I think NBA organizations, those guys do a great job of evaluating, and they understand exactly what they're looking at. And when you watch as much film as those guys do, you can start seeing there's a difference between some 6'1" guys and other 6'1" guys. There's a difference competitively, and just in the conversation with coaches and what coaches say about their player, and you get the consensus of a particular guy, and then you start moving past, the height, the weight, the strength, the quickness, and you start looking at the intangible things and why that program had the amount of success they had, and you start realizing that guy can do it at that level, at the level he did it at. He may be able to help our organization later on down the line. So I think NBA guys do a tremendous job evaluating, and again, I'm just really excited that Toronto chose him, and I'm sure he's very, very excited to be there.
Yeah, no, Toronto does have a history of developing guys, and in a more general perspective, just from your perspective, what's the most common question that you get from an NBA scout coming into San Diego State?
A lot of times you just ask, you get asked, how competitive he really is. That's one question that you hear a lot. The other question is, what translates to our level is another question you get a lot. And so, you got to really hone in on those questions, because those questions are critical questions that help them understand, the type of competitor they're getting, and then what skill they can count on for day one. And as coaches, as evaluators, we're all the same. We want to know what translates right away to our level, so that if we put him in a game, what can we depend on as a staff?
Yeah, and he obviously paid immediate dividends for San Diego State, and Raptors fans still have very high hopes for Malachi. One last question for you, more on the emotional end. I was wondering, where were you when you were watching the NBA draft, and what was your reaction when I don't know if you actually heard his name called on the broadcast, but what was your reaction when you found out that he was taken for the NBA?
Well, to be honest, I was sitting at home with a buddy of mine, and I was elated. I was so excited that Toronto had chosen, because again, as a coach, you want your guys to be surrounded by guys that are gonna lead your guys, and guys that have kind of gone down that path, that can kind of show you the ropes. And so, for all guys that are making that transition to the NBA, there's some guys that are special that can just go to that level and dominate right away. Like, we're seeing that a lot with guys like LaMelo Ball. You know what I mean? But Malachi is learning the ins and outs, and Malachi is already a complete person, and he understands who he is. He's not one of those guys that just tries to fit in, but to be, a 6'1" guard at that level, who better to learn from than Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry? You know what I mean? And learn how to make an impact in an NBA organization, and those two guys right there. So, again, I was so excited that it was Toronto, and Raptors fans are going to have, a guy that is going to be around for a long time. And I hope that's the organization he's with.
And one thing you can be rest assured is that the team is going to invest the time in him. They don't just give up on guys after a year or so. They hang on to second-round picks, and when they believe in someone, they do stick with them. So he's definitely, I would agree with you, he's in the correct environment to see him flourish. Listen, Chris, we took enough of your time. We really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck in the rest of the NCAA season.
Thank you so much, and again, I appreciate you having me on anytime.
All right, have a great day.